All right, ready? Ready?
That's so nice of you. So nice of you.
I got to make them look good.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU Undercoatings. On this episode of Sam's Garage, the boys from Low Car helped Sam install new valve covers on the Jeep Rock Crawler. Sam and Doug upgrade the fuel system on the Alpha One GTO. Sam heads out to New Hampshire to visit Joe DuPont and the NHOU family. Then Sam installs a new exhaust system on a friend's C8 Corvette. Kevin and Travis help Sam install new valve covers on the engine for the Jeep Rock Crawler. The new covers sport a slick carbon fiber inlay. The guys show each step of the process and how to transfer some of the existing hardware over to the new valve covers.
These are some good looking valve covers. Is this what you chose to put on the Jeep?
It is. These are my favorite valve covers.
So heavy duty.
Yeah,
Love it.
They're super cool. These come from our CMW line. They're fully billet. They utilize all the stock gaskets. And we've got some pretty cool little carbon fiber inserts that we can put in here, where you can have something custom made for yourself.
So what's the procedure of installing them?
So I like to leave these in here so we have some weight while we try to place these.
Okay.
But if we just start cleaning this or adhesive sticks, it's a real simple install because these stickers they're pretty stiff. They're a 3M backed adhesive. We'll get that cleaned up, then we'll pull those inserts out, open the hood, and I'll show you what we got.
That's a great idea. To do it right here, that way you don't mess it up trying to reach in the vehicle, especially one that high.
Travis, how'd yours come out?
Okay.
A little better than mine. A little low on yours. See, it's got a nice reveal. So it's got a little edge.
It's beautiful.
So you don't have any trouble.
So, do you give the option of having the fill plug, the fill on the left or right side?
So the oil fill is always going to be either on the passenger front or the driver rear because, they're symmetrical, but we don't really make them both ways. We have had guys call that don't want an oil fill. Just keep it clean, so they can just buy 2 of those.
Got it. All right, now we could reuse the factory gasket. If you're putting on these set of valve covers on an older vehicle, if your gasket is crushed, this is a perfect time to get a new set so that you don't have any leaks. What I like to do is when I'm installing the valve covers on the LS engines, instead of pulling it away, I actually will compress it a little bit and put it in, because you'll see that if you don't compress it, or if you even try to stretch it, you're gonna have a lot left over on one end. And it's a good idea to start from the middle groove here and work your way around.
So we got to reuse the stock hardware on these, so you have to pull these out. And the best way to do is just kind of rotate them when you're coming out, because it's got a kind of like a barb there just to keep them in.
All right, one challenge with this gasket, even, you know, the best of us, it'll get us sometimes, this barb needs to go past the aluminum in here. So to save ourselves the trouble fighting it in the car, we're just gonna go ahead and pre-install these just like the factory would be.
Well, there you go. Those look awesome. I like them better than the big block ones.
You saw the raw big block ones. Wait till I show you the chrome ones. They've got that spark that you really want.
I'm with you, but me being a business owner, I like to utilize that space and put my logo in it. That'd be nice.
That's a great idea. We like to include products that people can do, you know, put their own little twist on it, because after all, everybody likes to have something that speaks to them and shows off their style.
Yep. Now all we got to do is find us an intake manifold to put on this, right?
I think we can hook
Let's
you
go
up.
get one.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU Undercoating. Sam and Doug get ready to tackle the fuel system on the Alpha One GTO. The new system includes an upgraded fuel pump and filter with a return. All of the plumbing will consist of braided lines and AN fittings, providing reliability and longevity.
Doug and I are at the portion where it smells the most during the build, and that's the fuel system. Now, luckily, you had about 5 gallons of fuel in this tank, and therefore the tank itself was in good condition, the fuel wasn't too tarnished, and we're going to be reusing the factory tank. It's got a feed and return, uses gravity to feed the fuel system that's right here on the back of the car. It's all contained in one unit, so we're going to remove that and put in a Holley 450 liter per hour and a GM fuel pressure regulator with the return incorporated in it. It's going to give us 58 psi of fuel.
Yeah, and Sam, we're real fortunate. The way everything looks here, it's going to be real easy to get to, especially since we've added all of these new wonderful looking billet parts. It's going to be easy. Running the line should be super. This should be one of the easier things that we have to tackle on this build.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So what Doug and I are doing is we took the factory pump off the plate that bolts up to the car, and we went to the drill press and we drilled 4 new holes because we got lucky and our Holley pump fits perfectly in that plate,
Yeah.
and still gives us access to the 410s so we can bolt it back onto the car.
And when you're putting all of this together, the nicest way to do it is you have a transfer punch set. So you can go ahead and go right through the hole here, center it all up, do your punches all the way through it, go take to the drill press, drill it, and then everything just lines up as slick as can be, and you're in great shape.
We got the new Holley fuel pump installed onto the factory OEM mounting bracket. All we got to do now is install it in the car, but we don't have room for the original hardware. We're going to be using aftermarket cap screws, and we don't have room for the lock washer, so we're going to be using thread lock.
Yeah, the last thing we want, Sam, is for this thing to come loose. So the thread lock's going to make sure it's insured, holding it in place.
So I'm going to be using an AN fitting to make our hose ends, and this particular fitting is a -890. It's very expensive, so you want to make sure to protect your investment by putting a little bit of tape onto where the wrench is going to contact. Put a little lube on the threads, that way you got no binding because it is aluminum, and then you can get ready to screw it into the hose.
Yeah, and the other thing is make sure you use blues tape or painter's tape because the adhesive comes off real easy. If you were to use something with real strong adhesive, it's a real bugger to get it all apart.
Now what we're doing here is we're tying up the fuel line to the factory lines that go up to the car that's bracketed onto the bottom of the car. You're probably wondering why I'm using zip ties. These hold 40 pounds, okay? And what I can do with the zip ties, I can take it and run it along the metal line, but then I put a piece in between the zip ties, separating it from the metal. Therefore, the rubber line that we're running from the fuel to the front is going to be completely isolated, even though it's strapped to the metal lines going up front. All you gotta do is put a zip tie like this around your component. Take another zip tie like this. And you're creating a loop on both sides, right? When you tighten it, It's a separation. You got a hose going this way, and you got a hose going in that hole. And it keeps it away from the other component that you're strapped to. Well, that went pretty well. We got the fuel system in the car. We used the GM style fuel filter, which has a built-in regulator to it. All we have to do now is Y off at the rails and we should be good to go.
Yeah, you know, the nice thing about it all is the more original bracketry that we can use. We transfer hole the punches. The lines were easy to run. It made it simple. So now we're really ready to move on to the next step.
And you really want to make sure to tie up those lines well because we are dealing with fuel.
Sam makes a trip back to NHOU to visit with Joe DuPont. Joe walks us through the NHOU facility and gives us a behind-the-scenes look at how they test their products. Each batch of their product is thoroughly tested to ensure it lives up to the NHOU standards.
Joe, I'm loving this lab. Looks like you have a lot of fun here. And this is where you perfect your product and compare it to everybody else's, correct?
There's research and development done here, but there's a lot of testing done here. So what I want to know is when that product comes in, I test every batch. I want to test the viscosity, I want to test the sag, I want to test the stability. I want to know that before that product leaves, goes out to my dealers or out to the consumer, that it lives up to the standards that we set.
Now tell me about this cabinet right here.
So this cabinet allows us to, part of the testing is to confirm the performance, okay? So we can test viscosity, sag, and everything there, but performance is equally as important. So this will verify that the product is performing properly, which tells me it was manufactured properly. But on the other hand, it also gives me insight into competition.
Absolutely.
Which I love, by the way. I really do. As long as they put a good product that actually helps the industry, I'm okay with it. There are a few that don't, and I'm really upset that they would actually put something out that would hurt the industry as a whole. But this allows me to know where we stand with competition as well as to check the performance. This is a B117 testing cabinet. It's known worldwide as the standard for testing corrosion chips.
Very cool. You got some chips in there, shows us exactly what's going on. Right here, you talked about viscosity. What do you exactly do here?
So viscosity is measured in a couple of different ways. And in particular, Brookfield viscometer measures surface tension, okay, resistance on surface tension. So we would take spindles, depending on the thickness, and we would put a spindle on there, put the product in, and then we would measure it in centipoids. So basically a number 5 spindle. With our oil, we do at 100 RPMs, we're looking for around 2,550 centipoids.
You know, what's good about this is that Joe does all of his testing here. He knows what's going on with this product. He's got all the equipment to do it right, stay consistent, compare it to others, and really put out a good product out there. And this is coming from Joe himself, who actually created the product. And that's what makes NHOU separate from everybody else and gives them the quality that they actually have.
Yeah, the product was created in part by me, but it was also through my chemists in a lab.
You got some good talents in your corner.
They do. Most of these guys have been in the automotive chemical coatings industry for over 40 years. We try to pick a great tool manufacturer, but the bottom line is these guys don't always play fair. If they can actually reduce the cost of manufacturing the product and you don't know about it, then they will. So what we do is when it comes in here, we actually will check the viscosity, we'll check the sag, I can check for stability, ultimately we can check for performance. Once it goes through this test, then we know it's ready to go out onto the floor.
Explain sag. People know what viscosity is, but
sag is, so it would be, whether it's going to drip or not, okay? So we would take some of the material, we'd run it across this, put it vertically, and if it holds its position, then at that millimeter thickness, then we know we've achieved our viscosity and our sag resistance. If it drips like this one did, now this was actually a batch that we caught that had some issues. I mean, you can see it. It didn't make it to my customer's vehicle, it didn't make it to my dealers, okay? So we caught it first. And they do their own testing, but there's nothing, I think built-in redundancies are important.
Absolutely. You know, just like anything else, there's things that happen in manufacturing that can go wrong. And if Joe didn't do his own quality control, just like that example right there, can you imagine if that goes out, it's inconsistent, makes the product look bad, makes Joe look bad. That's why he's got this cool little lab at home. Not only does it look like a stress reliever, but it looks like he's actually making sure NHOU product stays quality control and consistent for you guys at home.
Sam's friend's C8 Corvette is in the garage for a new exhaust system. The owner of the car is a bit of a weekend warrior at the racetrack. The new exhaust system will provide more power as well as sound while shooting down the straights.
Got something special for you guys today. I got my friend's C8 Corvette. As you can tell from the tow hooks and the numbers, he mainly tracks this car here at Road Atlanta. We're gonna add a little bit more power and a little bit more sound by changing out the exhaust, and I'm gonna be going with a Billy Boat exhaust, something that has been around a long time, and I use them on my personal Z06. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're gonna do is remove the rear wheels. That's gonna give us access to the hardware for the mud flaps and the hardware underneath the rear bumper, because the first step to installing the exhaust on a C8 is to remove the rear fascia. Now that I got all my hardware removed, the fascia is ready to be separated from the car, but there's gonna be 3 electrical connectors that you have to separate before you can take it off. I got my wife Julie helping me do this. So the last thing we need to do before we tackle the actual exhaust is to get to the access panel that's located underneath the trunk liner. Now that we got the access panel removed from the trunk, you can see very clearly that I can get to my header manifold bolts. Anytime you guys are messing with these types of bolts, the stud, depending on the age, is going to have debris on it. So it's very important to use a little bit of lube in cases like this. Now that I got all the nuts removed from the header flanges, the next step is going to be to disconnect the valves for the exhaust. After that, we're going to remove the 4 hangers. 2 of them are bolted in. 2 of them are slip-ons. We're going to attack the slip-ons first using lube on the hanger, making it easier for us to take off the car. All right, so this car is equipped with 4 valves. 2 of the valves bolt right on. There is no linkage. 2 of them have a linkage. And these are metal, so what you want to do is first get the retaining clip off. That's going to come out of the ball joint right there. Then you can remove it very carefully, okay? Then we're going to remove the valve. Then we're going to remove the linkage. So this linkage right here is going to have to be shortened for the Billy Boat exhaust. Just put it in a vise. Go ahead and loosen your 8mm jam nuts. So now what I'm going to do is put the valve bolted onto the flange. You can reuse the factory bolts, but you are going to have to provide nuts, and they do provide you with flat washers. Now you want to verify the length of your linkage is going to be correct. Put this all the way out. This is standing at rest. Put 1 ball in there. Put the second one in there. When you tighten your jam nuts, make sure both the openings to your linkage are facing each other. It's easier to first put the linkage onto the exhaust portion first. Makes it to where you can get your retainer in the hole easy. And there you have it. All right, now I'm ready for the installation phase. That's going to be the final piece that goes right here in the center and connects the 2 manifold pieces together. Okay, now I got everything loosely in place. What I want to do is make sure that everything is lined up, and I'm going to start from the headers, tighten the nuts, and move my way back to the car. Once I'm satisfied with everything, I'm going to crank the car, make sure there are no leaks, then I can put my rear fascia back on. All right, that's my final clamp. Everything is tight, everything's installed. I've got it all lined up and level. Next, I'm going to go ahead and crank the vehicle while the rear fascia is off. Just in case I have an exhaust leak, I can address it now before I have to put the rear fascia back on. All right, that's all completed. Now the reason why I went with Billy Boat exhaust is not only did it sound great on my C5 Z06 supercharged, but for over 25 years they're one of the leaders in the industry. They started off with Porsche 911s back in the day. They even had the fastest qualifying time in the 1998 Indy 500. Now all I got to do is close the hatch, bring it down and see what it sounds like.